I like to describe it by going into the actual word itself, intuition. What it means actually is inner knowing. We're used to knowing, especially in the rational world we live, we're used to knowing things because we read them, somebody told us, we logically read it, but or we watched the video, yeah, or read the book, seen the movie. But intuition is a knowing that comes from other than simply being told. It is an inner knowing. Now it can take forms in many ways. Sometimes you may be doing something, going somewhere, and you have a knowing about something, or it can happen in business. Now on the practical side, intuition comes from mental faculties that are beyond the normal logical ones that we're trained to think. In a certain mode of parlance, we can talk about left brain and right brain. It's obviously a very generic way to define it, but it's still, I think, a good model that most people are largely still programmed on the left brain, where everything has to be rational, everything has to make a logical connection, and whereas the right brain is more imaginative, more open, and it can supply the intuition. And as we know, sometimes there is an inner knowing that may not even have a foundation in anything we can prove, anything we can touch, but it is very strong. It is very strong. See, after all, sometimes people say, well, no, if something isn't rational, if it can't be tested in a test tube or reproduced in a laboratory, yes, then it's not valid. But if we apply that same argument, therefore, what about love, for instance? One can safely say that most people's lives are largely motivated by the love they have for their partners, their children, their family. People will tell you, oh, this is everything for me. I will do everything for my family. Well, fine, that's obviously admirable. But if we apply that theory, that everything has to be tangible, provable in a laboratory, measurable, well, you can't measure love. You can't produce it in a test tube. There's nothing tangible about it that you can prove other than your own experience. Well, that clearly shows that limited paradigm of saying things have to be measurable is actually limited. Because otherwise we're depriving a huge chunk of our life. Now intuition falls often into that category. It is a knowing that comes from here. And even if sometimes you can't say why you have this intuition, nonetheless, if you know it, it's there. So, and obviously, as you know, as a MindScape instructor yourself, MindScape is an amazing practical tool to develop this intuition. We like to call it as opening the faculties of the right brain and integrating them into your life in a way that then they dovetail beautifully with the logical left brain facilities, giving it more power, more depth, more access to information, both higher and...
Gives it some structure to stop it being...
Yes, and that is important, because for most people intuition is totally unstructured, it's wild. Kind of, even if you have very good intuition, the analogy would be like comparing it to the world's best library. Imagine, all the books are there, so all the knowledge is there, but imagine if they're not stacked in any order, they're haphazard. How are you ever going to find anything? So MindScape kind of organizes that library. So now you not only have access to it, but you can actually use it. So that's the power of intuition is really nothing unless you have a way of accessing it and parameters by which to work with it. That's what I like about the MindScape.
Generally they think people are quite haphazard in their intuition.
Yes.
Because they're going about their daily life and they might think of someone and then they bump into them and they'll go, oh, that was a coincidence. But there are ways of kind of integrating it into life so that you're kind of feeding off that constantly instead of just having the old apple.
Absolutely.
You get your own fruit tree.
I guess another way of looking at intuition is that, normal knowledge, normal logic is a process we do with what we've learned. It's sort of like here, but intuition is like our access to a higher place. So our access to a higher place that links us all. That basically links everything, as quantum science would say. It's sort of a universal field. And therefore, it's like you receive intuition from that field which links us all. and actually goes beyond time and space. This is why most intuition can actually happen in ways that we do not consider possible, like how could I have known if that hadn't happened yet, or things like that. But here's, I think, something that's the crux, that in order to receive input from that level, we need to be in a position to listen to it, because it comes in, it's exactly like if you're engaged in a conversation at a party and someone comes up to you, doesn't tap you on the shoulder, but just comes next to you and says something. If you're too absorbed with the conversation you're in, exactly, you will not listen. Now, people are busy in that way that you describe, so thinking with the concerns of life, with all the stresses, or paying my bills, or guarding my ego, or who I am, etc., and all that, that we often are not able to listen to this intuition, and how very often it happens that something occurs in life, and the person says, I knew it, but it's only now that I see it. That's because in retrospect, in hindsight, you realize that you did have a feeling about it. You did have an intuition, but you are too absorbed to listen to it. It's kind of like driving at 60 miles an hour, or 100 miles an hour and not seeing the view. It's still driving around, isn't it?
Because people are quite blinkered in their worlds and what they're perceiving and what they're thinking of. Kind of open the paradigm.
I think intuition also links us a little bit more with who we really are, with our true nature. Because our true nature does not come from paradigms that have been imposed on us. It does not come from what we learn from books or even from school. School does not teach you who you are. School then teaches you skills. Who you are comes from within. It comes from an access to that same place I said, which links us all. It's a common field of energy and information that links us all. That's where intuition comes from, and we need to be open to listen to it, which, as I said today, the world is so loud. It's like going in a city. You hear all those sounds, and I think very few people today can retreat enough to be able to shut out everything, go quiet, and actually listen to what comes to you. Listen to just be, and listen to the heart. Listen to the heart. Well, the head always has a lot going on in it, doesn't it, with chit-chat. But the heart can be a very nice quiet place, like going into some cave and finding that tranquility.
One of my things at the moment is around education and schooling system. It's telling you that the answers are outside of yourself. So we're being programmed from a young age that you have to be academic and you have to read and you have to look for the answers because it's outside of yourself. But when really it's in here. It's kind of like we need to deprogram ourselves just to be able to be
I agree with you. Sometimes you can even just see it by virtue of the fact of how we identify ourselves. Like, you go to a party, you meet new people, invariably you get to chatting with someone, okay, you say, hi, my name is so-and-so, but invariably within the next 10 seconds, you can be sure someone's going to say, what do you do? There you go. So, clearly, a huge chunk of our self-identification is by what we do. In fact, that's the doctor, or that's the plumber, or that's this worker and that worker, which I think gives us a false sense of identity, because really it even encourages us then to identify with our roles and sometimes not be close enough to who we really are in here.
Especially when people are doing things that they don't enjoy and they hate just to make money.
I think if you go to that party and someone starts talking, and instead of saying what you do, you start to talk about yourself and your deepest desires, your thoughts, your feelings, probably people will feel uneasy and find an excuse to say, oh, excuse me, I have to be going. So yes, so it is an interesting, and it kind of gives us a clue to why we are shut out from intuition. Because intuition, first and foremost, comes in about ourselves, who we are, and then that's the more important intuition, more than intuition about, I don't know, having a premonition of which road to take to avoid the traffic jam.
Handy.
Yeah.
So I find, as a body talk practitioner, I find more and more clients coming in and people coming to MindScape classes and other things I teach, saying, I'm feeling lost, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what my purpose is, my passions. Do you think the intuition can help guide us?
Intuition can definitely help guide us, because that's ultimately what it is. If it's inner knowing, then it is not necessarily going to be conditioned by the thoughts of those around you. Because look how many times people go through life literally basing their idea of self, basing their idea of the world, their paradigm of the world, largely based on second-hand
Yes.
views, which were given to them, and they don't really know what they believe or not, but
Yeah.
it's given to them. I mean, the commercial world, the advertising world is always obviously bombarding us 24/7 with how we should think,
Yeah.
how we should look,
Yeah.
you know, how we should
And most of the
feel.
time it's Photoshop.
Well,
It's
exactly.
real.
Yeah, exactly. It's like telling you be a Photoshop person. um, uh, so yes, I think that is very important. And also there are factors today which are hidden, apart from the amount of stress there is, environmental pollution, noise, etc. But there are even things like electromagnetic radiation, which actually puts a strain on us. We address these topics in biogeometry that we just talked about and learn how to overcome them. But intuition, yes, as if it's not bad enough that we're not listening, we're to observe. It also has to make its way through all the stress of our life, and for us to finally listen.
Yeah, and people are getting more and more stressed.
Yes, and how refreshing it can be when you come to a point that you can listen to that inner voice. Because
Yeah.
that inner voice, one may say, hey, will it always be right? Well, not necessarily, especially if we're not trained to listen to it and can't listen. But when you learn to truly listen to what's inside, even if you can't put it in words, there's a feeling of being home, as we said earlier. So being home because it's closer to home. It's not something given to you by the outside world and telling you this is who you must be.
Yeah.
It is more closer to this is who I really am.
Yeah.
This is my nature, my being.
No, it's really beautiful being more connected with who you truly are. I sometimes kind of say it's almost like you're having a more extraordinary life.
It is.
Not in a perfection kind of way,
No.
but more in
No.
that inner space.
Yes, I've long found, and as I get older, really, as I grow in years, I mean, I find it even more, and it gives me even more peace that having an extraordinary life has absolutely nothing to do with how much I accomplish, with how much I accomplish in a day, with what I manage to do in a year or something. Not that it doesn't mean growing lazy. It simply means that for me, having an extraordinary life is more about how much I am in touch with who I am. That's it. Because then automatically everything falls in place from there. The work I do, how I spend my spare time, my objectives, my aims, my beliefs in life, my value structure, everything falls into place in accordance with that. And suddenly you take a relief because it's not what the world is telling you that you are, but it's coming in touch with it. That is the true